Welcome to a new installment where we'll explain how a turbo reactor works. As in the previous video on flying a plane, I will repeat many concepts for clarity. So I hope you like it. My name is Marcos and this is World of Aviation. Let's start by saying that a jet plane moves forward by a very simple principle, Newton's third law. This law also explains why a released balloon moves forward. Just like the reaction force produced by the air that moves the balloon, the force produced by the high-speed jet from the jet engine makes it move forward. So what is sought with this type of engines is to produce a high-speed jet at the output. The higher the speed of the jet, the greater the thrust force will be. If the hydrant air is heated to a high temperature, it will expand enormously and create a high-speed jet. For this, a combustion chamber is used. The fuel is burned here. Effective combustion requires that the air entering the combustion chamber be at a moderately high temperature and pressure. A set of compression caps is used to bring the air to this condition. The blades, similar to small fan blades as we see here, add energy to the fluid and its temperature and pressure especially rise to a suitable level to then sustain combustion. Look, I wanted to show you here a J-49 engine used by the Tall Fighter and the F-4 Phantom among other planes. Look at the number of stator rotor covers this engine has. We can see the space between each of the rotors, which is the moving part, the one that spins. That space is where the stator blades go, the fixed part, this that we see here. Remember the size difference between the first and last blades. This is to generate more and more pressure before the combustion chamber. This is one of the rotor blades. Curiously, these blades must have specific movement to resist centrifugal forces. Do you see how it has some freedom of movement? The compressor receives the rotational energy thanks to the turbine placed right after the combustion chamber. The compressor and the turbine are connected by a shaft. The high-energy fluid that comes out of the combustion chamber makes the turbine blades spin. These have a special aerodynamic profile, which generates a lift force that makes them spin. As the turbine absorbs the energy from the fluid, its pressure drops. Through these steps, we achieve hot air that exits at high speed through the engine nozzle. The engine outlet is usually narrower, and this results in an even higher exhaust exit speed. The cycle of this type of engines is called Brayton, and perhaps those who know how a piston engine works realize these turbojets also work with intake, compression, combustion with expansion cycles, and the exhaust of gases. This engine, which is from the plane we see here behind, will serve as a synthesis of everything we saw in the video. We have the air intake. We need that air to expand, to generate a lot of pressure and thus create thrust. We intercept part of that energy in the turbine, which is used through this shaft to move the compressor, which is exactly what increases the air pressure. It goes through here to mix with the fuel and thus igniting it to generate combustion. To get all this working, at startup an electric motor is used just like when one starts a car engine. Notice the sound in this video when starting this engine. And now, this is the sound of an electric engine. Modern airplanes use a two-stage turbine compressor system. Two independent turbine and compressor stages are used. The external compressor and turbine shaft pass concentrically through the interior of the external turbine shaft, and this is subjected to what is called a low energy flow and will operate at a speed lower than the internal turbine. The low pressure blades are longer, as this low speed helps to reduce the centrifugal stress induced at the root. Some modern aircraft even use three-stage engines, like the example we see here. These turbojet engines or jet engines tend to produce a lot of noise, and one improvement that was made was the incorporation of a large fan or fan on the low pressure shaft. These are called turbofan, and practically all current commercial aircraft use it. The fan drives a huge amount of air. The bypass duct that narrows along provides a good extra speed. In a turbofan engine, most of the thrust comes from the reaction force of the fan. It also greatly improves the airflow in the system by sucking in more air, helping to improve thrust. This means creating high thrust with a slightly higher fuel consumption, being highly economical, and that's why it is used so much in commercial aviation. The noise produced largely depends on the speed of the exhaust jet. Because in a turbofan engine, the cold air is diverted, it mixes with the hot air from the nozzle, and it is possible to keep the exhaust speed within a limit, thus overcoming the noise problem. With a quieter exhaust and economical fuel use, turbofan engines dominate the propulsion system in commercial aircraft. Afterburning is the process carried out by the afterburner, technically being a fuel injector in the exhaust nozzle. The injection of extra fuel serves to further increase the pressure of the fluid at the outlet, but this, as we have already seen before, generates a lot of noise and a high fuel consumption.
That's why it's usually used more in military aircraft.
The advantage of afterburning is its significant increase in thrust. The disadvantage, as we said, is the very high and inefficient fuel consumption. It takes about 5 or 6 times more fuel for a 40% increase in thrust, something that is very relative from engine to engine, so it is usually used for short periods of time and with the useful purpose of accelerating the aircraft in critical situations. For the compression stage, axial or centrifugal systems are usually used. The one we've been seeing so far is an axial system. In this other image we can see the centrifugal compressor, but it practically works the same way as we just mentioned. Only this one has special blades that expel the air outwards instead of backwards like the axial compressor. Here we have another type of engine. This was used by the Gloucester Meteor. Practically the mechanism is the same as we have been explaining until now, only it uses a centrifugal type compressor. The air comes in through here and throws it to the outside. The air comes in through here, it enters through these blades that deflect them 90 degrees towards the combustion chamber. Here we see one of the injectors, where it mixes with that compressed air and combustion takes place. Beyond the single-stage turbine. Finally, I would like to mention the turboprop, which would be one of these gas turbine engines that drive a propeller. The exhaust gases here barely contain energy for significant thrust. Instead, it is used to drive a turbine connected to a shaft that moves the propeller. The propeller produces about 90% of the thrust, while the exhaust gases produce the remaining 10%, though this varies significantly between engines. In turboprop engines, the shaft is unique and the propeller is connected to it through a reduction gear, because the maximum performance of a propeller is achieved at a rotation speed much lower than the gas turbine that drives it. I hope you liked this simple explanation. If so, don't forget to give a like, share the video and comment. That helps a lot when it comes to spreading the channel. Until a new delivery, this is Aviation World.